Sham Sharadavam Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadavam Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Gana Ganaptam Praptasa Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasa Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditra Madhyam Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarjanado Joktasya bhaktam sa niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasadu Shratmanatraptam Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasadu Shratmanatraptam Kritvaiva Trupti Vajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vajata Shadeva Shiradikama Tabayara Para Madhurya Leela Gunarupa Namnam Shiradika Tabayara Para Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam ne kunjayuno rati kelisidhyai jayali bhir joktir apekshaneya ne kunjayuno rati kelisidhyai jayali bhir tatrati daksha oti balabasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Sakchadharitena Shamastashrashri Ruktastatava Vyataiva Sadavin Kintu pravarja priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Yasya prasada Bhagavat prasada Yasa prasadam nagati kutapi Yasa prasadam Bhagavat prasadam Yasa prasadam Dayam stobam tasya Yasa trisandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Vine Nama Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Pachata Deshata Rine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Om Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Om Hare Rama, Om Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Haribo, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Namah Krishna, Jadavaya Namah, Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, जयो बालादेव जयो सुभद्रामा जयो सुदर्शन चक्र जय सीताराम जय सीताराम जय सीताराम जय लक्ष्मण हनुमान जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय प्रहलाद महाराज निताय गौर हरिबो 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 निताय गौर हरिबो 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 निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरिबो जय विष्णुपाद परम प्रभाजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्रीमद His Divine Grace अभयचरमिन भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय इस्कॉन प्रतिष्ठा विभूति संस्थापकाचार्य वैष्णव शिरोमणि पतित पावन श्रील प्रभुपाद जी महाराज की जय श्री गौर्य गुरु वर्गा पतित उद्धार की जय श्री रूप सनातन भौतर गुणात श्री जीव गोपाल भौत दास गुण सदगोस्वामी प्रभु की जय नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णवृंद की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय जय परम दयाल से नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन श्रीमन गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावरनावतार की जय गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जग की जय जुग धर्म हरि कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय बृहत दांग ट्रांसलेट बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपकुंद राधा कुंज मुकुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय द लॉर्डशिप श्री राधा नील माधव की जय श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशनकारी श्रृंगारे भगवान की जय सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय जगंगा माय जमुना माय की जय तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय निताय गौरी प्रेमानंदे all glory to the Assembly Bodies, all glory to the Assembly Bodies, all glory to the Assembly Bodies, all glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Yes, sir. नमस्ते नरसिंहाय नमस्ते नरसिंहाय प्रहलाद लाद दायिने हिरण्यकशिपोर्वक्षः श्रीलटाङ्कानकालाये इतो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह हितो यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंह बहिर्नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह नरसिंहादिं शरणं प्रपदे तव करकमलावरेणाकाम् अद्भुत श्रृंगाम दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृंगाम केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश जय केशवधृता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद ओ जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल जय विघ्नहर्ता नरसिंहदेव भगवान की भक्त प्रहलाद महाराज की श्रील प्रभुपाद की
July-2021
Can you sing? What is it?
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ये अभिलाषी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः जे तुम्हारा शरण लोय तारा वंचबुना होय जे तुम्हारा शरण लोय तारा वंचबुना होय कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास नयने हरि वो सदा जुगल रूपरासी जुगल रूपरासी कृष्ण दासे कोए ए जीना मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी
राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मा हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जया तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी
जया वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी
नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
Hare
Devataye Namo Namah. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Jai. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. I desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you as wishes fulfilled. Throw your myself upon him, you making resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also be a resident in the grove of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision, I will always be always dear to pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of our dances and rites. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own man servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna prays. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govind, Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Chaito Ratmanam Bhajanam Bhava Maha Shri Vishambika Vitaranam Vidyavadhudevam Anvadhuratmanam Tatrusa Ivana Para. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Jai. Namo Mahabharanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namo Gauri Krishna. Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life or repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is a prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is not even hard or fast food for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. only one your cause that was save his birth after that. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, somehow or other I'm fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, O will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name. O will my voice choke up, O will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so. Even if sunders me right from his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, but he's always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Shri Shikastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blaspheme bodies who dedicate life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, the Lord Shiva and Lord Brahman to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to weak imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strengthen chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. Instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. Do not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our respectful obeisance to all the Vaishnavas who worship the Lord. They are just like giant trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen Krishna soul.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janma Yasya Yato Niviyat Itaratas Chate Swavigyaswarat.
Janmadya Sayatam Vayaritarataschati Swavigyaswara.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Surayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Mujanti Jasuraya.
Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Tratri Sargo Misha.
Tejo Varimridan Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargo Misha.
Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
I
truth.
meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
And the
truth
primeval cause of all causes.
and the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond
It
him.
is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji.
It is she only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of
The
Brahma.
original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of water seen to fire, land seen on the water.
Only because of him do the material universes
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are
I
real.
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who is eternally existent in a transcendental abode,
which eternally exists in the transcendental world,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma Pujita Kaitravudra
Dharma Pujita Kaitavutra,
Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam
Paramo Nirmasharanam,
Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu
Vedyam Vastavam Astravastu,
Shivedam Tapa Trayon Bhuvanam
Shivadam Taputrayon,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite
Shma Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim Vaparer Ishwara
Kimva Paririshvara,
Sadyo Hridi Avurudyate Tra
Sadyorudya Varidya Titra,
Kriti Vihi Sususabhistakshanat.
Prithibhi Shushushvistatkana,
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Puran propounds the high truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of
The
all.
high truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of
Such
all.
truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold
This
misery.
beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva
is sufficient in itself for God
is
realization.
sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other
As
scripture?
soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentiveness submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
Shukamakad Amritadrava Sangitam,
pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Vibata Bhagavatam Rasamanayam,
aho raska bhuvibhavakaha.
Mura Hura Sikapu Vivabuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful man, relish my
the
Bhagavatam.
mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literature.
The mature fruit, the desired truth, the very
It
glory.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sishu Gadeva.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more
Although its nectarine juice was already relishable for all,
tasteful. Although its nectarine juice was so relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shramvatam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hridyantak Stohi Bhadrani,
Hridyantasto Hyabhadrani,
Vidunoti Sruhitsatam.
Vidunoti Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the very
or
glory.
to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
Or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad
is
Gita.
itself righteous activity.
It is self-righteous
And
activity.
for one who hears about Krishna,
For one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's
acts
heart,
as the best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing friend,
and purifies the devotee who constantly engaged in hearing of him.
and purifies the body who constantly engages in hearing.
Nastapresu abhadresu
Nastapreshu bhadreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityang bhagavata
bhagavati utamasloke
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
bhakti bhavati nahistikhi.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops the dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and
devotees,
from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the
he
Lord.
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamalobhadayasche
kamalobhadayasche
chetaitaranabhidam
Chaitayatera navidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Titam sadve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
one becomes free from the modes of passion of ignorance.
And thus, material lust and avarice are diminished.
And as material lust and avarice are diminished,
Evam prasana manaso
evam prasanna manaso
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
bhagavat bhakti yoga
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
bhagavat tattva vijnana
sangasya jayate.
mukta sangasya jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
chidyante sarvasamsaya,
chidyante sarvasamsaya,
siyante jasya karmani,
chidyante chasya karmani,
Mr. Evatmanishwari.
Dita Sarvasamishwari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the hardening of the material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of samsham samangrama,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from devotees of Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of
Shri
Krishna.
Shri Guru Vastika prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it.
The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just like a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it.
So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
For my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet, such a spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments.
Chanting the holy name, dancing, excessive singing, and playing musical
The
instruments.
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his heart.
because it
Within his
the
mind.
melody of pure devotion within his mind.
Tears flow from his eyes.
Sometimes he has to stand on end.
I'm sorry. Sometimes his hair stands on end.
Sometimes his hair stand on end.
Tears flow from his eyes.
He feels quivering in
I'm
his
sorry.
body.
He feels quivering in his body,
He feels quivering in his
and
body.
tears flow from his eyes.
And tears flow
From
from
my
his
respectful
right
basis
ways.
unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a
The
spiritual
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna.
The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shishurada.
He also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages disciples in such
They
worship.
dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
clean their temple,
clean their temple,
and perform other similar worship of the Lord.
and perform other similar worship
I
of
offer
the
my
Lord.
respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a
The
spiritual
spiritual
master.
master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food,
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
Analyze that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat prasada,
When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad,
he is
he
satisfied.
is satisfied.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava in the groves of Vrindavan.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastime of Radhika Madhava and the qualities,
I'm sorry,
names,
and their
forms,
qualities, names, and forms.
and the qualities, names, and
The
forms.
spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to relish this at
I
every
offer my
moment.
respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan.
The spiritual master is very eager because he's expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different arrangements for the perfection of Radhika and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of
I offer
Vrindavan.
my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant of the Lord.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master as a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
Therefore, I offer my humble obeisance unto the Lord of the spiritual master, who is the born representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, when I receive the benediction of Krishna,
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
with the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advance.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance at the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lord, the spiritual master.
Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadi Radhi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam.
Chintamani Prakasat Masukalpa Vriksha.
Chintamani Prakada Satma Sukalpa Viksha.
Laksavrite Susurabira Vipaliyantam.
Laksha Viteshi Surabira Vipalayantam.
Lakshmi Sahasrasata Sambrahma Sevyamanam.
Lakshmi Sahasrashta Sambrahma Sevyamanam.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Venam Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham.
Venum Kvanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham.
Varhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam.
Varam Vatas Samasitam Buddha Sundaram.
Tandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham.
Kandar Pakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Alola Chandra Kalasatvanam Vansi.
Alola Chandra Kalasatvanam Vansi.
Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam.
Rannam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam.
Shyamam Tribanga Lalitam Niyata Prakasam.
Syamam Tribanga Lalitam Niyata Prakasam.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Anjani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti.
Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vritti Manti.
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiranjaganti.
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti.
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya.
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujala Vigrasya.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam.
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam.
Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha.
Adyam Purana Purusham Navajauvanam Cha.
Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto.
Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo.
Antastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragami.
Ayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam.
Vayo Rathapi Manaso Muni Pungavanam.
Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve.
Sopyasya Prabdasimya Vichinchatate.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotim.
Ekopyasya Shatum Jagadanta Kuti.
Yaschaktirasti Jagadanda Chayaya Danta.
Yachakti Rasti Jagadanta Chaya Yadanta.
Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam.
Andanta Rashta Paramanu Chayantarastam.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajastataiva.
Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manujastataiva.
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhushaha.
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusha.
Sukta Yameva Nigama Pratitaistu Vanti.
Shukte Yameva Nigama Pratitaistu Vanti.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 21. Kalam karma sabhavam cha
Vamcha
Mayeso mayaya swaya.
Mayeshu Mayaya Svaya
Atman yadrichaya praptam.
Atmam Jadrichaya Praptam
Vibhu bhusur upadade.
Vibhu Bhushur Upad.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates, by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities and their particular nature, for which they were created, and he again merges them independently. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The creation of the material world, wherein the conditioned souls are allowed to act subordinately by the Supreme Lord, takes place again and again after being repeatedly annihilated. The material creation is something like a cloud in the unlimited sky. The real sky is the spiritual sky, eternally filled with the rays of the Brahma Jyoti, and a portion of this unlimited sky is covered by the Mahat Tattva cloud of the material creation, in which the conditioned souls who want to lord it against the will of the Lord are put into play as they desire under the control of the Lord by the agency of his external energy. As the rainy season appears and disappears regularly, the creation takes place and is again annihilated under the control of the Lord, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8.19. So the creation and annihilation of the material worlds is a regular action of the Lord, just to allow the conditioned souls to play as they like, and thereby create their own fate of being differently created again in terms of their independent desires at the time of annihilation. The creation, therefore, takes place at a historical date, as we are accustomed to think of everything which has a beginning in our tiny experience. The process of creation and annihilation is called anadi, or without reference to date, regarding the time the creation first took place, because the duration of even a partial creation is 8,640,000,000 years. The law of creation is, however, as mentioned in the Vedic literatures, that it is created at certain intervals and is again annihilated by the will of the Lord. The whole material, or even the spiritual creation, is a manifestation of the energy of the Lord, just as the light and heat of a fire are different manifestations of the fire's energy. The Lord therefore exists in his impersonal form by such expansion of energy, and the complete creation rests on his impersonal feature. Nonetheless, he keeps himself distinct from such creation as the Purnam, or complete, and so no one should wrongly think that his personal feature is not existent due to his impersonal unlimited expansions. The impersonal expansion is a manifestation of his energy, and he is always in his personal feature despite his innumerable unlimited expansions of impersonal energies. Bhagavad Gita 9.5-7. For human intelligence, it is very difficult to conceive how the whole creation rests on his expansion of energy, but the Lord has given a very good example in the Bhagavad Gita. It is said that although the air and the atoms rest within the huge expansion of the sky, which is like the resting reservoir of everything materially created, still the sky remains separate and unaffected. Similarly, although the Supreme Lord maintains everything created by his expansion of energy, he always remains separate. This is accepted even by Sankaracharya, the great advocate of the impersonal form of the Absolute. He says, Narayana paro vyaktat, or Narayana exists separately, apart from the impersonal creative energy. The whole creation thus merges within the body of the transcendental Narayana at the time of annihilation, and the creation emanates from his body again with the same unchanging categories of fate and individual nature. The individual living entities, being parts and parcels of the Lord, are sometimes described as Atma, qualitatively one in spiritual constitution. But because such living entities are apt to be attracted to the material creation, Actively and subjectively, they are therefore different from the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates, by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities and their particular nature for which they were created, and he again merges them independently. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So there are 8,400,000 species of life, out of which there are 400,000 that are human. And of that 400,000 different species, very few are actually civilized. Now, how do we understand if someone is civilized? They follow regulative principles of Vedic Shruti, or Vedic knowledge. And they are analyzed as things that you should not do and things that you should do. So people who follow the yamas and niyamas, they're considered realized or civilized souls, and they are in the Vedic Varnashram Dharma system. And in modern times it's called Daiva Varnashram, or God-centered Varnashram. So it's a rare thing for a person to, in a human body, to try to become Krishna conscious. Most people are completely enamored by the possibility of controlling and dominating some part of material nature for their own selfish purposes. And therefore, they get education by which they can dominate others and dominate nature. But nature cannot be dominated because nature is under control of Krishna. So it's a hopeless endeavor on the part of the living entity. The living entity is not meant to live in the material world. A living entity, the jivas, are all coming from the spiritual world, but they have misused their limited free will, and they voluntarily walk away from Krishna and desire and become attracted by the glitter of the material world and think that they can become an independent enjoyer and dominator of material nature. This, of course, is impossible because material nature is also spiritual. It also comes from Krishna, and it's impossible to dominate it. One may try to dominate some part of it for a short period of time, but they will always be defeated in their futile attempts. So when the living entity becomes completely frustrated, there's an opportunity in trying to dominate material nature. And in order to try and dominate material nature, one also has to forget their relationship with Krishna. So, therefore, they get entangled in a hopeless effort, and frustration is guaranteed. Now, how they deal with that frustration, that is up to them. I mean, if they seek out a bona fide devotee and trying to find out why they are suffering, they have a chance of becoming enlightened and go back to Godhead where they belong. If they go to an unenlightened person, a fake so-called guru, then they continue in the cycle of birth and death, because the fake gurus encourage them with either magical qualities, attaining magical qualities, or attaining impersonal knowledge and trying to merge into the Brahma Jyoti, or they inspire them to perform different ritual activities in order to be elevated to higher material planets where the sense enjoyment is enhanced many, many times. So the fake gurus, the so-called gurus, direct people toward mystical powers or knowledge by which one can maybe merge into the Brahman, or doing rituals by which one can be elevated to the higher planets and enjoy better sense gratification, but one is still a prisoner of the cycle of birth and death. So there are certain laws of material nature. One of them is birth and old age, disease, and death. No one can escape that. And therefore, any attempt to exploit material nature for one's own selfish purposes will ultimately result in failure and frustration and misery. That's why there's so much suffering in this world. And unless we understand why we are suffering, unless we understand how we have been illusioned by Maya. Maya has two functions. One is prasabdatmika, and the other is avaranatmika. Prasabdatmika is the power of Maya to throw you into the material nature. And then secondly, once you're thrown into the material nature, you become covered by the material nature in the form of the three modes of material nature. And then the three modes of material nature which manifest as matter and knowledge, or mundane knowledge, and mundane activity, completely makes us subject to three types of misery. Miseries of this body, miseries caused by other bodies, and miseries caused by natural cataclysmic events. So therefore, the three types of miseries, adibhuta, miseries of this body, meaning birth, old age, disease, and death. Miseries caused by other bodies that condition us to eat, sleep, mate, and defend, and not have any time for spiritual life, not be even interested in spiritual life, and just seeking sense gratification all the time. And finally, being engaged in activities, not subtly, but actually actively, for sense gratification. Subtly, people think about it all the time, plan for it, desire it, but then the activity of actually engaging in sense gratification, and at that point we are completely covered over and oblivious of what is the actual purpose of human life. So this is further explained in a very precise way by Srila Prabhupada. It's just amazing. The way to become free of this whole enterprise of misery, miseries of the body, miseries caused by others, miseries caused by natural cataclysmic events, being completely illusioned by Maya, and always experiencing lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and envy, and harassed all the time by the material nature's many different aspects, heat, cold, happiness, distress, riches, poverty, all these dualities that confuse us. So the solution, as we explained before, is explained in the 4th chapter, 24th verse. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagno, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaevatina Gantavya, Brahmakarma Samadhina. This verse says, a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his or her full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So, what does this mean exactly? Well, Prabhupada explains that this verse explains how one can attain spiritual knowledge by performing activities that please the Supreme Lord. Now, this is a subtle, wonderful opportunity to free ourselves. And it's very easy to do. It's not complicated. But we have to see the benefit of it. So, Shankaracharya, he came up with some theory. And his theory was, Sarvam Klav Idam Brahma. That everything is Brahma. Meaning everything, the absolute truth is Brahmajyoti. And in order to attain that, he formulated the Mayavad philosophy, in which it's the ultimate canceling of things, like canceling your individuality, canceling all activities, canceling all desires, canceling Krishna, canceling the spiritual world, of Vaikuntha, Goloka. It's the ultimate cancel culture of everything. Today they only have partial cancel culture. The Mayavad philosophy is complete cancel culture. You see. And his point was that it's an impersonal theory, and he used this phrase, Sarvam Klavidam Brahma, or Brahma Satyam Jagat Mitya, that the Brahman effulgence is real and the whole material world is false. And in other words, that by nature everything is Brahma or Brahma Jyoti. And that's the only reality. So his philosophy has caused tremendous confusion and about what the scriptures actually say and mean. He gave a false interpretation of the whole scriptural evidence, pramanas. And because of that, the Vaishnavacharyas have tried to correct all this and debunk what he said. So the question is now, how can a person become free of this almost absolute entanglement in the cycle of birth and death? So over time, it's become clear, especially when you read Bhagavad Gita, that it's only by devotional service, under the instruction of bona fide gurus, Siksha and Diksha gurus. If one can spiritualize their normal activities in life, then they can become free from the cycle of birth and death. Spiritualize your normal activities. So what are those normal activities? Is eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, right? Everybody's doing that every day. There is working, and there is downtime, leisure time. So how can you spiritualize all these activities? And basically, when you spiritualize, you put all your activities in the service of the Supreme Lord. And at that point, they become yajna, or sacrifices. So this is a sublime philosophy. Most people can't understand it. But if we carefully hear the explanation of this, so Prabhupada says, when the Vedic phrase Sarvam Klav Ida Brahma, which was made up by Shankaracharya, right, is interpreted in this way, that is, offering everything, all your activities, your thoughts, your energy, to pleasing Krishna, at that time, everything becomes spiritualized. The same thing that causes entanglement in the material world becomes the means by which you become liberated. It's simply changing the purpose of how you use everything in your life, your time, your body, your intelligence, your mind, all the material things that you may acquire. So in other words, when one invokes the spiritual or transcendental in everything, then matter loses its mundaneness And then only can one realize the perfect meaning of the phrase Sarvam Club Ida Brahma. See how brilliant the Vaishnavas are. They take this thing that Sankaracharya fabricated, right, to mislead people, and they turn it around to lead people to the correct understanding. So if you want to understand that everything is Brahma, or everything is based on the Brahma Jyoti, then you use everything in Krishna's service. Whereas the Mayavadis, they reject everything because they don't want to serve the Lord. They want to serve themselves. Say. And the Vaishnavas say that anything connected with the Lord in devotional service is transcendental. So a mountain called Govardhan, well, there are many mountains, but that mountain, specifically Govardhan, is connected to Krishna. So therefore it's transcendental. And people visit it, like thousands and thousands of people visit it every day to get the mercy of the Lord. Right? So anything connected to Krishna is transcendental. In other words, it is non-different from the Supreme Lord himself. So the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is non-different than the Lord because it's connected to the Lord. These are the names of the Lord. And just as an example is, if you take a piece of iron and you put it in the fire and keep it there, eventually it turns into fire, right? You can take it out and touch something and it'll burn. So in the same way, you take this material nature or material things and you engage them in the service of Krishna, then their real nature comes out because they are the apara prakriti, the inferior spiritual nature of the Lord. So the spiritualness of matter becomes revealed when it's used in the service of the Lord. Just like marble, when it's used to make a deity, it manifests the Lord. And food, when it's offered to the Lord, it becomes prasadam, the mercy of the Lord. See? So, in the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, Brahma, that he is the original, he is the effulgence from his body is the Brahma Jyoti. Brahmana hi pratistaham amritasya vyasya cha sasvatasya chidharmasya sukaisya ikantikasya cha. So that's 14th chapter, 27th verse. And it says that the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness, is coming from Krishna. It's his effulgence. And we learned a lot about the Brahma Jyoti. We're not going to go over it again. But basically, material creation happens because of the effulgence of the Lord. And it expands and glows. And then when it glows, the material world is created. So, since Lord Krishna is the source of the Brahman, devotional service to Lord Krishna establishes the true meaning of Sarvam Club Ida Brahma, that everything is Brahma, or everything is the absolute truth. Because Krishna is the source of everything, so everything is connected to Krishna. Right? And philosophies like the Mayavad philosophy and atheistic philosophies, they try and separate everything from Krishna. But Krishna consciousness wants to reunite everything. Everything is united to Krishna. It's never separated from him in the sense it's his energy. But the Mayavadis and the atheists, they want to convince you that that matter is independent of Krishna. See? So people act in this way, believing, understanding that everything belongs to Krishna, therefore everything should be used in Krishna's service. They become progressively detached from matter and attached to Lord Krishna and in Krishna's devotional service. And they're able to purify the mirror of their hearts and mind and extinguish the forest fire of material existence and become situated in their original spiritual position as Lord's unalloyed devotee. So, this is all transcendental knowledge. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 7th verse, it says, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. They're always working. Such a man is never entangled. Well, entanglement is becoming a slave of sensual urges. That's entanglement. Becoming a slave of sensual urges. So, most people live exactly opposite to a pure soul. So a pure soul controls the mind and senses and acts in such a way that people feel endeared to such a pure soul, because there's no selfishness, there's no lust, there's no greed, there's no envy, and therefore they feel safe and they feel confident in the association of such a person. And everyone is dear to him because he doesn't see the body of people. He sees their soul and its connection to Krishna. See, today we're learned to see the body and to think that the body is the person. So, you have black people, you have white people, you have brown people, you have tan people, you have all these different shades of color people, right? But that's not who they are. They are the soul within the body. It's not that they are the body, but we're taught only to see the body, whereas a pure devotee or a pure soul sees the soul of people and its relationship to Krishna. So, therefore, Prabhupada says that people who work fruitively, in other words, who work for the result of their work and use it for sense gratification, they cannot cleanse their heart of material contamination. So you see, this is why material education is so dangerous. It teaches you to think, I am the body, and sense gratification is the goal of life, and one can have, let's say, continued sense gratification by making money. And therefore, they spend their whole time making money and then spending it for sense gratification. And that's the purpose of the whole educational system. They teach people to become consumers, right? They don't teach you to become frugal and only own a few things. They want you to own everything and work hard to get it, you see. And why? Because they have so many factories producing so many unnecessary things. And they have to convince you to buy those unnecessary things. Like, for example, you might think, oh, I can't live without my cell phone. But people live without cell phones for millions of years. Oh, I can't live without a house that has a toilet and septic tank, or all the toilet goes out, all the toilet water and stool goes away, and I never have to deal with it, and there's heat and there's electricity. But people live without these things for years, for much longer than what we're living with them. See? And they still did very well. Like Vyasadeva, he's still living. He's in the Badarik ashram, way up there in the Himalayas, and he doesn't have all these things. But yet, he's writing very profound literature. He doesn't have electric light, doesn't have a cell phone, doesn't have a credit card, doesn't have a Tesla, but yet he's existing and very well. He's doing very well, and he's the most intelligent person. So we see how it says here that they cannot cleanse their heart of material contamination. They are slaves of their sensual urges, spending their time in gratifying their senses according to their whims. Yet they shamelessly say that all their actions are prompted by the Supreme Lord. Yeah. People say, well, look, you say there's a God. God made the world. So if I'm doing something wrong, it's God's fault. Why did he put me in this world? Why did he make, pretty women or handsome men? Why did he do this? It's all his fault. It's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just being led by him. So, therefore, yet they shamelessly say that all their actions are prompted by the Supreme Lord. Being cheaters and atheists, they speak like this so that their impious acts may be acceptable. And thus they inflict untold misfortunes and calamities to the world. In other words, by saying it's all God's fault, they free themselves from any guilt for all the nonsense that they do. By contrast, the pure self-realized souls are constantly absorbed in serving Lord Krishna's lotus feet with their body-minded words. They never associate with atheistic people. These saintly persons know that although the spirit soul is infinitesimal, it is nevertheless endowed with minute free will at all times. The Supreme Lord is absolutely independent and can exercise absolute free will over all. Because the spirit soul is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Lord, the Lord does not annul his minute free will. So we have free will. We can walk away from Krishna anytime or go back to Krishna at any time. Nothing can stop that. Krishna doesn't interfere. See, that's the danger. He did not make us like a robot that we're forced to be Krishna conscious. You have to choose it. And you have to choose it not once, but every second of your life, or our lives. And at any time, one can walk away from it, or one can walk toward it. Therefore, Prabhupada says, the Supreme Lord is absolutely independent and can exercise absolute free will over all. Because the spirit soul is qualitatively the same as the Supreme Lord, the Lord does not annul his minute free will. The spirit soul, unfortunately, misuses his God-given minute free will and falls into the dark well of nescience or ignorance and illusion. This is what happens to kids. They get exposed to only materialistic education, and they get teachers who are all materialists and most of the time atheistic or Mayavadis, and they get misled and they get trapped into spending the rest of their life in sense gratification. So once the spirit soul takes shelter of Maya, the illusory material energy, he develops the material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance. The spirit soul loses his original characteristics and develops a new nature, which is controlled by the three modes of material nature. So what is this new nature? It's sense gratification as the goal of life. That's what's being taught in the schools. That's the whole message. The internet. That's the whole message of advertisement on television and billboards, right? And movies and books. You go down the line. Everything is directing people towards sense gratification. And young kids have no way of seeing through it. They're blind, what you call blindsided. They get a blast, constant blast of sense gratification as the goal of life. So the spirit soul loses his original characteristics and develops a new nature. So like, for example, Black Lives Matter. What does that say exactly? Does that mean that white lives don't matter? Or Chinese lives don't matter? Yeah, basically that's what it's saying. It's another type of racism, a severe type of racism. And then they talk about the critical race theory. This is started by a black man, that all white people are evil. The United States is evil. It started as being evil, and it's continuing to be evil. And now they're mandating that your kids learn critical race theory. It's going to be taught in all the schools now. I'm not kidding you. It's a very vicious thing. So all this, and it's a theory, right, made up by someone, just like Sankaracharya made up Sarvam Klav Idam Brahma and gave it a faulty meaning. This is the same thing. Someone just made up this theory called critical race theory. If you want to know who it is, you can look them up on the internet. And he's convinced the government, the United States Army also, to teach this to everyone, right? And especially to kids. So therefore, the spirit soul loses its original characteristics and develops a new nature, which is controlled by the three modes of material nature. And this continues until such time as the jiva may transcend or can transcend the modes. His actions are prompted accordingly. If it happened in any other way, then material variegatedness would not be visible in this phenomenal world. That's an amazing statement. Look at all the material variegatedness in this world. All kinds of different trees, all kinds of different fruits, all kinds of different species, all kinds of different cars, all kinds of different houses. This is all to please the sense gratification of a living entity. See? And the multiplication of all this variety is because there's unlimited desires of people. There should be, so when you say Om, Om means there's only one desire. That's to please the Lord. But as soon as you say something else, it multiplies very quickly into infinite number of desires. Therefore, there's an infinite number of cereals. There's an infinite number of olive oils. There's an infinite number of this and that, right? And infinite number of wines. You just go to Safeway. Why is there so much variety of things? Because people have different desires, unlimited desires. You see, and because of that, they get entangled by all these desires, and it's called supply and demand and supply. People want marijuana. Okay, now they supplied marijuana. People want heroin. Okay, they supply heroin, even though it's illegal. But because the demand is there, the supply is there, right? Now, if people all wanted Krishna, then there would only be one desire, right? But then all the variety of things we see would be used in the service of Krishna. So therefore, it becomes one. When you use matter in the service of Krishna, it manifests its spiritual nature. Right? Then there's no difference between the material world and the spiritual world. But if you have other desires, then it becomes material, and you can't see Krishna at that point. So, Prabhupada says, these saintly persons know that although the spirit soul is infinitesimal, it is nevertheless endowed with minute free will at all times. The Supreme Lord is absolutely independent and can exercise absolute free will over all. Okay. So, the spirit soul unfortunately misuses his God-given minute free will and falls into the dark well of ignorance and illusion. Once the spirit soul takes shelter of Maya, the illusory material energy, he develops material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance. The spirit soul loses his original characteristics and develops a new nature, which is controlled by the three modes of material nature, and this continues until such time as he transcends them. His actions are prompted accordingly. If it happened in any other way, then material variegatedness would not be visible in this phenomenal world. So if a person fails to inform himself about the very subtle laws of nature and workings of material nature, and at the same time he argues that all activities are sanctioned and inspired by the Supreme Lord, then he is reducing the Supreme Lord's position and making him out to be partial and unjust. The Lord never favors one and discriminates against another. Factually, he advises everyone to give up all material activities, which are by nature unstable and temporary. Because of forgetfulness of God, a man becomes an eternal victim of ignorance, which then colors all his actions. So you see, everybody is blaming God. It's his fault. He made the world like this. He made evil. He made this. He made that. It's all his fault. I'm not guilty of anything. And so, and he favors certain people and he doesn't favor others. Just like Archbishop Tutu in South Africa, he said something very interesting. He said, when the white man first came to Africa, he had the Bible and we had the land. Then he asked us, please close your eyes and let us pray to Jesus Christ. And when we opened our eyes, they had the land and we had the Bible. It's funny, man. But that's a fact. That's a fact. They took it away from them, right, and made them basically slaves. You know, of course, they were doing that to themselves also. I mean, black slavery, black on black slavery had always existed in Africa, way before the white man came. But the white people made all the blacks slaves, in a sense. So this is all nonsense. But when you had the land and somebody else had the Bible, then you end up with the Bible and they have the land, then you say, look, this is God's fault. He did this. You know, he made white people evil, and he made us to be slaves. So they blame everything on God. And they say that God discriminates. He chooses the white people over the black people. So you see how it becomes very, very vicious, and it's all false. So therefore, Krishna says in the 5th chapter, 14th verse, the embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. See, everyone's walking around like a robot, under the control of goodness, passion, and ignorance, and engaged in sense gratification, and getting more and more entangled, and having to suffer birth, old age, disease, and death. All these things are unnecessary. But because of ignorance, people think it's the only way of life. And when they hear about the spiritual world, they say, this is all fairyland. It's all Disneyland, and it's not real. The only thing that's real is matter. See? So it's very dangerous. Modern education, modern so-called philosophy is very dangerous, but actually it started a long time ago with the impersonalism. You know. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? What? The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates, by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities and their particular nature for which they were created, and he again merges them independently. That's the verse.
Yeah, so here towards the end, in the purport, the whole creation thus merges within the body of Transcendental Narayana at the time of annihilation, and the creation emanates from his body again with the same unchanging categories of fate and individual nature.
Yeah, it's in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also. 9th chapter, 17th verse.
Because the Mayavadis talk about just everything merges back and everything is.
Yes.
But in reality,
No, what is your question, though?
No, what's the reference where that basically it's like a suspension of activities, and the fate is still there, even at the time, at the end of annihilation of the millennium of Brahma's life. Every living entity
Yeah,
is still
this
there.
is 8th chapter, verse 17, 18, and 19, which says, "Again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated." Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but when it's annihilated, it's not complete annihilation. It's just a suspension.
There are three annihilations at the end of Brahma's day, at the end of the life of Manu, and the end of Brahma's life. So at the end of Brahma's life, everything is absorbed back into Mahavishnu.
But according to this, even at that time, the fate or the karma state is preserved? Or is
Yes. Waiting for the next birth. It's not annihilated. That's not annihilated. The karma of the jiva is not annihilated. So the next birth, the jiva starts again with all their, unsatisfied material desires. And they take a body according to their karma and their desires, and then they continue. It's a very, very tight system. You can't get out of it. There's only one way to get out, and that one way is made fun of, or it's condemned by modern education. They don't want you to get out because they want you to keep buying all their products that are unnecessary. So if you read chapter 8 in Bhagavad Gita, beginning verse 17, "By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of the night. And at the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest from the unmanifest state, and therefore, thereafter, when the night falls, they are merged into the unmanifest again. Again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated." All right, so if you read the purports,
Sure.
you'll see. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. Yeah.
You just said that after the end of the Brahma's life, everything will get absorbed in the body of Mahavishnu.
Yes.
So the including the jivas and all the material.
Yes.
So currently we see like all earth, sun, and everything will turn into they will get destroyed.
Everything you see is the energy of Krishna. But Krishna has the power to change energy into matter and matter back to energy. Okay. So, for example, with electricity, right? You can you get light, right? But all these things that you see can go back into the original earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? And then that can be all transformed back into just energy. And that energy is reabsorbed. Okay. So nobody else knows how to do this, change energy into matter and matter into energy. They're trying to find out how to do it, but they've never really done it. This is explained, I didn't get to it, but this is explained in the chapter 1, Canto 1, chapter 9, verse 33, or 22, let me see. This is, yeah. Anyway, I'll discuss this tomorrow. Yeah. I'll discuss it tomorrow. Where did I put that? Yeah, I don't see it right now. We'll do that tomorrow. Yeah, go ahead.
One more question. As you had mentioned, because it's God's fault, so
God particle?
God's fault.
God's fault, yes.
So, so some people also say that this is not God's fault, but God's plan. But why God cannot stop it? So how to answer this question? They go slightly.
No, see, it's
positive
all based on free will. We have limited free will. If we use the free will correctly, it stops. If we keep using the free will incorrectly, it won't stop. It's up to us. God doesn't, if we use our free will incorrectly, he doesn't stop it. He just steps back and says, okay. Just like, let's say, one of your children revolts against you and refuses completely to follow anything you say. What would you do? Like, for example, in Texas, there was this one Muslim family, and one of the daughters started to secretly date, outside people that were not Muslims, and then she wanted to get married with one person. And father got so angry, he murdered his daughter. Right? So that's one way of dealing with insubordination of the kids. But normally you'd say, okay, that's what you want. My hands are tied. I can't do anything. Hopefully one day you'll come to your senses. We're always here for you. But what can you do? The person that refuses to follow any instructions. So then you just wait and see, if they want to come back, then you will accept them. So that's the story in the Bible also of the prodigal son. There's a story in the Bible. The father had two sons. So one son was always obedient, always followed what the father said. And the other son revolted and left. And for years, the father was always wondering what's happened to him. We don't get any news from him. And one day the son came back. And when he came back, the father was so happy. He treated him as if, he gave him all kinds of good food and clothing and everything. And the other son, who was always faithful to him, was never treated he was treated nicely, but never treated with that lavishness that the father was giving to the son that left, right? But, finally he didn't say anything, but he felt a little strange because here's a guy that leaves, doesn't do anything for the father, and the other one is always there serving the father. But when the other one came back, he lavished him with all kinds of, gifts and things like that. But that's the point. See, Krishna will do everything to get back the jivas, to go back to Godhead, right? But when they're rejecting him, he doesn't interfere. They come under the control of Maya and the three modes of material nature, and Maya's beating them up all the time, right? So there's two ways that Krishna tries to bring them back. He speaks Bhagavad Gita, and he produces Maya to beat them up really hard. But first, Maya gives what they want, and then she takes it away and smashes them by old age, disease, death, accidents, IRS investigation, this thing, that thing, right? It's all Maya's tricks. So Krishna doesn't interfere at that point. But he's waiting for them to come back, and he does send people like Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to preach. But it's up to us to accept. If we don't accept, then we're completely controlled by Maya. If we accept, then we can free ourselves relatively easily by chanting, dancing, feasting, and regulating our activities. Okay? So now we're hearing really high quality knowledge. This is the reality of where we are. And one thing we have to realize, this material nature, this whole society is misleading people, especially kids, and once they get misled, they go the rest of their life in illusion, chasing after things that are basically not good for them. It's the way they're chasing after it. If you chase after things to use in Krishna's service, that's okay. But if you chase after things for sense gratification, that is a death sentence. That means you're definitely going to take birth again and continue suffering. Haribol. It's much easier to become Krishna conscious than to become a materialist. The materialist gets completely entangled, is dealing with so many problems all the time, and other people are competing with them, and it's very difficult. And there's problems in the family, problems at work, problems in the country, problems in life, right? But if you become Krishna conscious, it's like you transcend all of that. And you can have a peaceful, happy life, and also fully Krishna conscious, and go back to Godhead. So why can't we teach this and make it understandable and a real alternative? So that's the point. And Prabhupada is going through all this information here to try and make this point that don't be tricked by Maya, because it's just going to be a life of struggle. And we're not meant to struggle like that. Haribol. We'll have to get a cart or something, carry all these books. No, I mean, I have all these books because